My clock can't be wrong. That thing's only been hanging up there for 40 years. This is Mayor Shave, and it is Wednesday, April 26th at 6:30 p.m. and I call the Aberdeen City Council meeting to order. Deputy City Clerk, could we have a roll call vote, or roll call, please?
You plug yours in more or something.
Oh, that was me.
Ellis,
Yes, by Zoom.
Francie,
Here.
Gaken,
Here.
Catchman,
Here.
Lawrence,
Here.
Mackey,
Here.
Morrison,
Here.
Bertini,
Here.
Ross,
Here.
Shaw,
Here.
Cedar,
Here.
Taylor,
Here.
Shave.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Folkers, our famous older retired finance director from the city of Aberdeen, moved on to the port. Would you please lead us in the flag salute tonight?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I move that we approve the agenda for tonight.
Second.
Thank you. Motion was made and seconded to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to public comments. Any comments from the public tonight? In the no mass movement to the podium, I will.
Everybody's out enjoying the good weather.
I'll move on to the consent agenda.
In tonight's consent agenda, we have the minutes from our April 12th, 2023 meeting, as well as our accounts payable and payroll. I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion?
I
Under
noted-
discussion.
I noted a couple of minor typos, but unfortunately I didn't bring through a corrected copy, so we might want to.
On the minutes.
On the minutes.
One of them was the word presidents, then
Yeah.
it should have been present. I
Present.
think.
And I will note a couple were corrected where it said shaved. It was corrected to say shave, Mayor Shave. So there were a couple of those corrected in the minutes.
Don't be disrespectful.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're moving on to presentations, and the first one is Deputy Chief Snodgrass, Aberdeen Police Department, and the Aberdeen High School Criminal Justice classes is what he's going to talk about tonight. Okay, you're up.
Just a moment.
No.
Need it? Yeah. Good.
Okay.
So the chief asked me to come here today and kind of tell you guys a little bit about what we're doing in high school. I just put together a quick PowerPoint. It's not going to take very long. So just basically how it started. Earlier in the year, Chief Green asked me to meet, Chief Green asked me to meet with Lynn Green, Kirk Hamsler from Aberdeen High School, and asked if we'd be interested in assisting the Aberdeen High School Criminal Justice class. They actually have two classes. They have a Criminal Justice class period in the morning, and then I look at my phone to make sure I get it right. Then they have a longer 2.5 hour session right before lunch, or right after lunch, and it's criminal justice, and it's part of the Twin Harbor Skills Center. And students can get college credit from Grace Harbor College as well for it. Together, Ms. Gravely and I decided that Wednesday classes would work the best for our schedules. We decided on 7 Wednesdays that officers were available. We haven't used any overtime to pay for it. We've just done it on duty to alleviate any costs for the city. Some of our dates have had to be adjusted just due to staffing issues. For the most part, we've been able to adhere to our schedule. Initially, we decided we would assist Mrs. Gravely in teaching her curriculum. However, as it evolved, I was the first one, and the students really kind of just wanted to talk to the police officer about being a police officer and the goods, the bads, the interesting stuff, the hard stuff that we deal with. And so that was actually really fun to interact with the kids. I think I was there for about an hour and a half. They asked a lot of really good questions. They asked pretty personal questions every once in a while that I could answer most of them. So we had a good time. Some of our officers have done presentations. Can you go back to that real quick, Mary? And then some have question or answer periods. And kind of what we decided worked the best was when we have one planned, and Mrs. Gravely is teaching it, kids come up with questions they're going to ask us about the presentation, about stuff they've learned in the week or two leading up to it. That's good talk. Okay. So the first one we did was February 15th. I met with the class, like I said, and I spoke about my career, answered any questions we had. On March 1st, Grace Harbor Drug Task Force met with the class, did a presentation to the class about drugs in our communities, and answered questions on the topic of drugs. I think that's huge for the kids. It's good for them to know that the stuff's out there. And the Grace Harbor Task Force, they do presentations for municipalities and stuff, and Sergeant King and the 2 other officers were doing a fantastic job. So that was really beneficial for us. On the 22nd of March, the Aberdeen Police Department Detective Division, 2 of them, 2 out of 3, Sergeant Sexton and David Terrace instructed the class, and they did a mock crime scene presentation. I think the kids really liked that. The school yearbook was there, and they took pictures, and so probably get the yearbook. On the 19th, Chief Dale Green and I went, and again, I think we were there scheduled for an hour. I think we might have done 2. The kids had a lot of questions for the chief, and the chief was really good with the kids, and they talked and asked us a lot of personal questions. I think it's good for the kids to see that good people, just police officers, they really responded well to the chief. She's excellent. On the 3rd, Department of Fish and Wildlife, Officer Brandon Baldwin was going to come do a presentation on their program in their department. One of the kids in the class, there's only 7 kids right now because they're kind of starting it. They're kind of using this as a recruiting tool to get more kids in it for the next semesters and whatnot. But one of the kids in the class really wants to be a fish and wildlife officer. So I reached out to one of our officers whose father is a fish and wildlife officer, and he's going in the right direction. So we're going to have a fish and wildlife come and do a presentation. And then on the 12th, Officer Mullins and Sergeant Jesus Martinez are going to do a presentation discussion on working for multiple agencies and other experiences. Sergeant Jesus Martinez worked for DOC and he worked for Oakland PD as a corrections officer before coming to us. And he's got a great story about how he came across the border and then got his citizenship and worked really hard and got his degree, became a police officer. So that's his year. And then Officer Mullins came through us through the state patrol. And so he's kind of got the difference between being a city cop and a Washington State Trooper. So that was good for the kids to hear. And then Officer Slater at K-9 Zero, they're going to go up there. We had to reschedule her just due to some scheduling issues, but obviously the kids are super excited about the dogs. And so we're going to try to get both of our K-9 officers. That's all that. Question? Yes, sir.
Are you pulling the sheriff's department in at all in this?
I have not. I have not reached out to them. I could see if they're interested in doing it. Kind of hoping that you kids want to cops come to Aberdeen. Yeah, that's a good point. I think Sheriff Walsh would be very excited.
Yeah, I was just thinking sheriff, state patrol, all, law enforcement agencies, but you already had someone with state patrol background. So.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sounds like a great program.
Yeah, it's going pretty good. It's hard with our staffing levels to get kids up, officers up there. We decided it was going to be a priority for us, and any interaction you have with kids, and they tell their friends and family, talk to good people.
one of the things that we were experiencing is, as you all know, is we have recruitment and retention issues. We're down about 5 officers now. And so we partnered with the school district to create kind of a direct pipeline for this sort of thing. So this is a long-term strategy that we've implemented. In the summer, we're going to have a firefighter boot camp. So that's the first of its kind for the school district as well. So that'll be just kind of a 2-week course. It's pretty intensive, but again, we want to kind of grow our workforce here at home. So that's kind of the goal of that.
Is there also any interaction or participation with like the college on this?
We haven't done it yet. No, we've gone to a career fair, job fair up there at the college, but not so much with the criminal justice classes. That might be a good future step for us.
We've also had Danny work with our HR director. She worked with the school district as well to she would give them job descriptions so that they could kind of look and see if in the future they could create curriculum around the job descriptions, especially those really tough to find jobs like our water sewer treatment plant or our water operators. So it's been a really good partnership with the school district. And then hopefully in the future, we're looking into mock government to have kind of, whether it's a representative here from the school district that sits in with us, or if we host some sort of mock government, outside of during business hours or during school hours. So we're exploring kind of those options to get kids interested in civic participation, civic government. So.
I know when I was in college, I had a great opportunity to do a mock legislature. And actually I was Speaker of the House and got in there, and actually it was held in the state chambers, in the House chambers. And that was really a neat experience. And I think it would be good at a local level to show kids and teach them something about local government.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And just remember, Councilmember Cedar, that you could talk to these kids about going on to college and spending all that money and all that time in college, or you could convince them to come be a police officer or firefighter for the city of Aberdeen and start with a big paycheck right away with a very rewarding career.
Very true.
I'm not picking on you, I'm just teasing.
We have a lot of opportunities.
We do. We do. Well, our port is here with us tonight, and it's always good to see you guys from the port, because this might be a small town, but I consider you guys partners in just about everything. And we have to work together on things, and it's always good to see you. So the microphone is all yours.
Thank you, Mayor Shade, for those nice words, and it's good to see the city council again. We've got some exciting things to talk to you about. I'm Mike Folkers. I'm the Director of Finance and Administration at the Port of Grace Harbor, and we've got a few more slides than the Deputy Chief had today, but I think you'll find it interesting. I did want to apologize to Councilmember Lawrence and Ellis. They've seen this once already, so it might look a little different, but it's pretty much the same, but I'll try to make it as interesting as we can. So with that, the next slide is an overview of our project area. And just to get your bearings, I've got Aberdeen City Hall in there where we are today. And then Terminal 2 down below there is primarily been an export dry bulk facility used by a customer of ours called Egg Processing to ship soybean meal. And then Terminal 4 has been typically used for logs, cars, and other break bulk items. That's going to be the real conversation of today. Egg Processing has been at Terminal 2 since 2003, so we've had a 20-year history with them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that relationship in just a second. So Egg Processing is a member-owned co-op. They represent over 200,000 farmers and 150 member cooperatives. They purchase and process more than 5.5 million acres of member soybeans every year. They also operate 10 soybean processing plants across the Midwest, producing soybean meal and crude soybean oil. And they've got an 11th facility that's due to be under construction as well. So they'll have 11 processing plants across the Midwest. So this is a picture of some soybeans. And what you get when you crush a soybean is two items. One of them is soybean oil. It's a very valuable commodity. It's used in a lot of cooking oil. And in foods you probably wouldn't think it's in there as well. It's also a fuel stock, so you can refine it with a catalyst to make biodiesel. One of the other co-products is soybean meal, and that's the other smaller item there that has become a valuable product as well. So it's a protein source that we use here in the United States to feed our livestock, but it's also a very valuable protein source in Asian countries to feed their chickens, fish, aquaculture as well. So what really started all of this was renewable diesel. We know that battery power, if you've seen cars out there, is really the future. It's going to probably be quite a while before we see it in a lot of big rigs, though. So you're not going to see it in log trucks, semi-trucks, or delivery trucks for quite a while. So what those types of vehicles have done in the meantime is to try to replace that petroleum fuel up top. And they've done it with a biodiesel. So I've mentioned before, biodiesel takes a typical oil, a soybean oil, or another animal oil, and what it does is it uses a catalyst that's, in most cases, methanol, which is also a fossil fuel. But even by doing that, they've been able to reduce the emissions by about 70% when you put that into a vehicle. So what renewable diesel does, it's a little different, uses the same soybean oil. They use it at high heat, high temperature, and blend it with hydrogen. And you can put it right in an existing fuel tank. So with that commodity, there is no fossil fuels, and you get a reduction of 90% in the emissions on a vehicle that burns that. So you can see why that's in such high demand. Again, putting it right in an existing tank is super valuable. So the demand for that oil is going to be big. So a lot of we've seen a lot of big players enter that market. So the Chevrons, those types of big players are getting into the renewable diesel market. It's driving a big demand for soybean oil. So what happens when you crush that soybean meal, or that soybean, you get meal and oil. So the meal has to go somewhere. So there's going to be a big demand for soybean meal as well. So you see the capacity here. AGP had projected this to increase almost 30% by 2026. So that's a big demand for this type of commodity in this market. It has to go somewhere. So in the scenarios that we've talked about with AGP, there's 16 million metric tons of additional soybean meal by 2026. So our little port in Grace Harbor, we get about 3 million metric tons out of there every year. So think of that nationwide, there's going to be 16 million more of those. Has to go somewhere. We can use a lot of it domestically. We'll ship it to other places as Canada and Mexico, other places in South America, but they would like to get almost 3 million more metric tons out of Grace Harbor shipped into Asia. So we're already doing 3 million. Their plan is to get another 3 million out of Grace Harbor. So how they plan to do that is they would like to expand into Terminal 4. So I mentioned before, Terminal 2 is where they are currently. That's on the left side there. But their project is that one in pink. And what they plan to do there is have 2 large dump pits that can dump 4 rail cars at one time. It will convey into a loading system that can do 2 holds at one time, 3 holds, 2 holds at one time onto a vessel. So live loading coming in by rail, getting 3 million more metric tons out of the Pacific Northwest. So they'll still continue to run their plant at Terminal 2, and they'd like to provide that expansion that is shown there in pink at Terminal 4. So the ports part of this project is we've got to put in another entire rail loop. So you see that all that in green. I apologize, that wish that screen was bigger, we could see it, but there's another existing rail loop all the way around, plus 7 ladder tracks. So the idea is they can bring in the unit trains, which are 100 cars at a time, all on site. So we don't have to stop, we don't have to break them. And we can load 100 empties there, so we can have a whole unit train of empties there too. So again, we don't have to tie up traffic in those intersections. We can have it all on site. The other portions of our project are that part in blue at the bottom. We're going to upgrade our fendering system from what it is today, which is a wood-based system, into a nylon fender system, much better on vessels. We're going to modernize our storm drain system so that anything that hits the dock is treated, sent upland, where it can be treated before it's discharged into the river. So none of that soybean gets out of there. And then the last piece is that part in yellow. So we purchased the pontoon site a few years ago. We're going to repurpose that into a laydown area where we can continue to do logs, cars, other break bulk out of that site there, and continue to use Terminal 4 on the A side as well. So a lot of things going on there. Their project is huge. Our project is equally as big. So this is a picture of what the ship loader will look like. I mentioned before they're going to dump trains into 2 pits, and they're going to convey it into this system, which will load vessels 2 holds at a time very quickly. No storage where they have today at Terminal 2. You've seen the 8 storage silos that we have today. They're adding 4 more. No storage at this site. It's going to be a live dump into a pit right onto a vessel. So some of the project impacts on this are so far we've projected 80 plus long-term jobs. That's huge for Grace Harbor. That's almost going to drop the unemployment rate a full percentage point by this project alone. $123 million private investment from AGP. It's going to double the cargo on the navigation channel. And then I mentioned before, it's going to serve a big demand for that renewable fuel stocks, and then also aid in global food security. So this is a project of national significance determined by the United States because of those factors. So our schedule is pretty aggressive. I mentioned before, they see this market by 2026, it's going to be in full swing. They've got to get beans planted in the ground. They've got to get customers sold. So they've got an aggressive time schedule. And so you can see that we've already started on the design, the environmental, and the engineering of this project. And we anticipate construction to start in the second quarter of 2024. And they'd like to be up and operating in the second quarter of 2025. And again, we've got to develop those markets in Asia. They are going to develop those markets in Asia and get additional beans planted to meet this demand. So here's our part of the infrastructure projects. I mentioned AGP is spending $123 million. We're going to spend $46.85 million on the items I told you earlier. That includes final engineering. The big part is that rail upgrade. I've confirmed this with our engineers because this number is staggering to me, but 10 miles of additional rail on that site. So imagine putting 10 miles of rail in that acreage we've got there. Cargo yard expansion, stormwater upgrades, and then the new fendering system, almost $7 million. Doesn't include in this the $3 million we're probably going to spend up front on our design, our engineering, and our environmental review of this. So again, a lot being spent here, but big project as well. So I mentioned before that we're going to spend almost $47 million to leverage this $123 million project. And here's how we're going to fund this. We were lucky enough to be awarded a PIDP grant earlier in the year for $25.5 million. That's federal money coming to Grace Harbor. We're excited about that. Comes with a lot of strings. We're going to have to work hard to make sure that we can actually obligate the money. We've asked the state of Washington for $7 million. We've been awarded 3.5 already. We're going to continue to work for the other 3.5. The port's going to put in another 2.85. I mentioned we're going to be into this 3 million. We're going to put in another 2.85 million on construction. And then we're going to ask the 0.09 committee for $1.5 million. And we'll probably do that over 3 years. We don't want to tap that fund all at one time, but we think this is, by every definition of an economic development project, this is the one. So we're gonna ask them for $1.5 million. That leaves a $10 million gap, almost 20% of the project still not funded. And we have wanted to take advantage of a recently enacted statute called tax increment financing. So I'll tell you a little bit about what that is, but that's how we would like to plug the last 10 million of them. So tax increment financing is an idea that's not original to Washington. 48 other states have it. We're the 49th one to get it. So it was passed in 2021, signed by the governor, and became effective this year in, last session. This session, they brought it up again to clean up a few items in it that didn't make sense as far as definitions, but the basic body of the statute has remained the same. And the idea is that growth should pay for growth. So you shouldn't have to dip into your general fund to pay for an economic development project. So if, the way I put it in, I explained to people in the city world is if there's a big mall coming to town, you shouldn't have to dip into your general fund to put in water, sewer, streets, sidewalks. That growth should pay for itself. And that's the idea behind the tax increment financing. And I'll show you how that is accomplished here in a second. But the definition of it is the ability to capture and use most, and I'll show you why that's underlined in a second, of the increased local property tax revenue from a new development within a defined geographic area. So again, we're going to try to use most of the increased property tax revenue, not sales tax, new development in a defined geographic area. We've also got to meet a but-for test. And the but-for test is that the private development would not reasonably occur without the proposed public investment. So the way we explain this is AGP is not coming to Grace Harbor if we don't put in 10 miles of rail, if we don't fix the stormwater, if we don't upgrade the fender system so we don't beat their vessels up when they come in. They're not going to come to Grace Harbor. They're going to find another port on the West Coast to do that. So again, we're meeting that but-for test because they're not coming if we don't make these improvements. So the TIF area that we're proposing is that small black box there around Terminal 4. That's all we want to do in the tax increment financing area. It's all public property today. There's no private property in there. There's no property tax revenue that comes to any agency out of that black box. There's no personal property that comes out of that black box. But what the tax increment area would do is create a box, and any increased assessed value in that box would then become part of the TIF area and would be taxable to that TIF district. So I'll tell you a little bit about the levies, and I apologize that I hope you can see that. I can see it here, and my eyes aren't very good. So those are the levies on the left now that are currently in that tax increment area. So you can see it adds up to $10. The city of Aberdeen has almost a $2 levy. The state schools have a couple different levies. The county's in there. The port has a small levy in there as well. And then some other junior taxing districts. And lastly, followed by the school bonds. So what the most I was talking about is that there are some levies that are preserved. And those are the two with the X's that I've shown there. So the state school is preserved, and the school bonds at the bottom are preserved. So what you end up with in that tax increment area we've shown is $3.91 a thousand. So anything that goes into that tax increment area as far as construction increases assessed value, it'll be levied at $3.91 going forward. So here's even the worst slide that you can't see, but I'll talk you through it, is these are the revenues that come out of that on the $3.91. So what you can see in the middle there is $123 million. That's the AGP improvements. We've multiplied that by the $3.91, and we've shown it for 25 years, which is the length of the tax increment area. So you can't go beyond 25 years. So what we do at the end of that 25 years is leverage that revenue for debt service on a bond issued by the port for $10 million. So that's how we fill the gap, is we've leveraged that tax increment area at $3.91 on the new construction for a $10 million bond. So again, that would be the port issue bond, and we would use the revenue solely for debt service. I've shown here a 3% growth rate in assessed value. If it grows faster than that, we pay off the bond sooner, the tax increment area goes away. If we have shortfalls in there, the port makes up the difference. So again, it's no new taxes to the citizens and no new taxes otherwise. So I wanted to show you just some of the sales taxes that are in that tax increment area that agencies are going to receive. So it's shown the AGP project here at 123 million. I've shown our port project here at 46.85 million. Those are all taxable. So when we hire contractors to go do that 10 miles of rail, they're going to pay a sales tax to the city of Aberdeen on it. So over the course of this project, if these two are completed, the city of Aberdeen would get almost $1.3 million up front on this project. So this is, we're talking 24, 25, that comes directly to the city. Similar for the junior taxing districts that are in there as well. The county's got a small piece, as well as the transit, and then some of those other small agencies. So there's money getting paid up front on this project, but again, any improvements that occur in that tax increment area from a property tax standpoint would stay in the area. Personal property taxes. So the next steps are, we had our first public hearing with our port commission yesterday on this. We're going to have a second public hearing on May 9th. And we're going to recommend adoption by the Port Commission on May 31st. And just for some timing, that TIF area would be created effective January 1st of 2024. So what would happen is the assessor would come out like he does all of our other properties, and he would assess any improvements in that TIF area. And then in 2025, the property taxes would begin flowing. We think there's going to be a little construction in 2024 that would flow into the 25 property tax, but probably not much. The real flow will occur in 2025. And then the end of that 25-year period would be 2048, and the TIF area would end. And that estimates now are it's almost $250 million will roll back onto the tax rolls for taxing agencies like the city of Aberdeen. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you for staying with me. I know this is a lot to look at, so. So I was talking earlier that the project at Terminal 2, that you might have heard the pounding from for the pile that's been driving.
No,
I start to notice it when I don't hear it nowadays. So they're adding 4 more silos onto that site to complete an entire 12 or 10 structure of silos there. So 12? 12 pack. Good, I'll remember that from now on. So there is sales tax today being generated on that construction. City of Aberdeen will get 1% of that project as well. So in addition to any improvement in assessed value on there. So that's separate from this tax increment area, but again, there is still money flowing out of our construction projects.
is the tax increment area project specific?
It is. So we can only, there's a couple different ways to look at that, I guess. One is that anything in that area is counted in the property tax, but our project is limited. So if we got a whole bunch more money, we couldn't come back and say, hey, we want to put another 5 miles of rail in. So our project is limited to that 46.85 we talked about. What's not limited is the assessed value in that tax increment area. But all that does is, again, pay off those bonds.
Liz has a question.
Any other questions from anyone?
Liz.
I have a question about construction and how much impact it would have with this. I noticed the levee wasn't mentioned at all. Is there a plan to raise soil levels, just in like the yellow area that was mentioned? You know, that's kind of low to the ground there. Is there going to be any soil brought in from anywhere else?
Port's actually higher than anywhere else.
Yeah.
We're like an island. And Port Industrial Road, just for reference, that would be the top of the levee. The elevation of Port Industrial, as it comes in from the east, from the sewer treatment plant, eventually they use the length of going through the port of Port Industrial.
Like 15.
That's the levee through there.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Ellis?
Yes, thank you. And thanks, Mike, again for a fabulous presentation. And it's just really great to hear that the tax increment area is not going to affect Aberdeen residents outside of that box. So it's really just focused on the project. I'd asked this question before, but looking for your answer on knowing that this is an ambitious timeline, how will you schedule the added rail traffic so that it doesn't end up tying up traffic in and out of the shopping area or at the other intersections? And then will you be coordinating with the flyover construction project so that can happen in a timely way?
Yeah, thanks again, Liz, for your question. You know, we talk about, you're not gonna flip a switch in 26 and go to full, or I don't care what the engineers say, it'll take a couple of years for it to kind of ramp up, which kind of coincides nicely, and again, congratulations to the city on your work to get the funding for the flyover, the grade separation in East Aberdeen. You know, it'll be close. You know, I can't say, you know, we'll probably be done before that, but we probably won't be at full speed. So I mean, actually, I think it's lining up quite well, as well as you can plan for something like that. And again, the reason that we put all of that track inside the three terminals is we discovered when we did the last one in 2012-13, it really mitigated the impact in East Aberdeen when the trains can come into the port and leave the port as whole trains. They don't have to stop at Pointer's Yard. They don't have to stop. And that had a big, so that's why we're spending all that extra money to be able to make sure we can handle the traffic inside the break terminals.
Good point. The biggest situation that causes traffic holdups for any length of time over at the shopping mall area is when they're building a train. And in this case, they won't have to do that. So the train will move in and move out.
Liz asked a question yesterday, I'll follow up. She was wondering about the railroad, and as you might know, they're in the midst of rewiring the whole Wishkah River Bridge because it's been vandalized. And they're doing that, but they also they have a project northeast of Elma, going down towards Shelton. They're going to put another siding in there so that they can build their manifest trains out of town instead of in downtown Elma. And then the railroad's also planning on building two more sidings, an additional one at Cedar Creek, and then one between Cedar Creek and the Van Allen plant. That way they'll have places to park either full or empty trains as they're passing and going back and forth. And then they'll also be doing some improvements to the switch in Centralia so that they can unload, receive and ship out full unit trains. So that will help too. So it'll be a place to lay them down with instead of just keep pouring them into town.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. Great report.
And they're done driving pile, and we heard today the silos they think they'll have the silos poured by the 4th of July.
Wow.
That's a lot quieter.
Yeah, that's fast.
And,
So
Bayview is just happy as a clam at high tide. A lot of cement.
Did you hear how I described the pile driving? I was asked quite often how long this is going to last. And I said, just listen to that. And instead of that, whatever sound is bothering you, just think of it as a ka-ching and a dollar sign going up every time that hits.
through economic development. Thanks for having us.
Okay, moving on to mayor's report. I just wanted to thank our representatives in Olympia, Senator Wilson, Representative Walsh, and our lobbyist, Gordon Thomas Honeywell, for the magnificent job they've all done. They've, you know, and the list is longer than that, I realized. There's other representatives in Olympia that have been so helpful to getting us the award for the funds for the US 12 rail separation project, as we were just mentioning, $72.6 million. I mean, when has this ever happened in Aberdeen? Ever. That's just amazing. And that's all out of the state transportation budget. Out of the state capital budget, $18.6 million for the levee project for this budget, and next will be 17 million they've approved. So it's just amazing, and all of our state representatives have been down here and looked at what we're proposing, and really went all out to help us, and I'm very, very happy about that. And that's all I have. I'll move on to council reports.
Mayor Shea?
Yes.
I just want to make a quick comment. I wanted to go on the public record to note there've been some concerns expressed about the monies that are being proposed to be spent for the 118 West Wishkah building. And I just want to make sure the public is aware that the city owns that building. The upgrades that we're going to complete, the money that's going to be spent, first off, it's not coming right out of directly to the city coffers. We're getting the money from the state. The repairs and improvements are necessary to create a functional and safe building, and it will enhance the overall value of that property. Whether the city ultimately, if that building is used for a museum and or any other city offices, or if that property ever gets to a point where the city puts it back on the market and sells it, I think it's a good investment. And I just want to try to allay the concerns of some citizens who have brought this up as, why is the city spending this money? So
I don't know of any plans that I've ever heard of the city selling that building
I'm just saying,
or not using it for a museum. I mean, that's where we're moving forward with on this building, is for it to be a museum and the visitor center. So there's just certain common things that have to be done with the building. It's an old building. Most everybody calls it the Salvation Army building. I remember when it was Sears. And you know, it's got this standard old building woes, like the roof and some of the windows, and
elevator.
the elevator has not been renewed. I forgot what the date is now, 1978 or something like that is what it's dated on the license in the elevator. So there's things that need to be done, and we're gonna move forward with them. One of the probably the most frustrating things is we just love to move the artifacts into that building right now. And because we're spending $4,000 a month rent, but the problem with that is the building has had some water leaks, and it does not have the proper fire suppression system, and it does not have a adequate fire alarm system. And so, as frustrating as it is, we don't want to move the artifacts in there until we get it to a minimum state to prevent any problems or damage. So we're moving forward with this as fast as we can. Any other council reports?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Last Saturday, Councilmember Morris and I attended a presentation put on by the Leisure Manor Tenants Association. It was a standing room only crowd of park residents there to present a petition and signatures to owners of the park. The meeting was informative and respectful. The Leisure Manor Tenants Association wished to express their gratitude to the City Council for taking an interest in their issue and giving consideration to solutions moving forward. We hope in the coming weeks to have some action for the council to consider, and residents of the park would appreciate time in the future for one more very brief presentation. Councilmember Morrison will be forwarding a short video and information from the Tennis Association to all council members.
Okay,
It was actually very, very, very informative, and it was packed.
glad you guys could go to that. Thank you for doing that.
Where was it held?
At the Leisure
At
Manor.
the Leisure Manor?
I think right now we have some questions sent off to our legal, and we hope to be able to move forward with something on that. So, okay, anything else from the council?
I had one thing just really quick. On May 31st, it's our 5th Wednesday, which there's a scheduled council meeting. I have spoken to our city administrator, and it doesn't sound like there's anything right now or any reason to hold the meeting at this point. So I would put forward a motion to cancel that meeting.
Okay,
Second that.
okay, motion's been made and seconded to cancel the May 31st council meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Gonna be on vacation tonight, so that-
It's a holiday week, so
Yeah.
everyone's busy.
Any other council reports? Seeing none, I'll move on to city administrator reports.
Thank you, Mayor Shave. We had a community discussion on homelessness with wards 5 and 6 on April 18th. And I wanted to follow up and let you know that tomorrow we will have another community discussion with the unhoused community tomorrow here in the council chambers at 6 o'clock. We sent out notice, so hopefully we get a good turnout for that particular discussion. Everything is included in my report. If you have any questions on my report, I'm happy to answer them.
What time is it?
6 o'clock tomorrow. And then also we have 2 more discussions after that for wards 1 and 2 on May 2nd, and then wards 3 and 4 on May 23rd. And those both will be held at the Rotary Log Pavilion. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Tomorrow night's meeting is here.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else on the staff? Okay. I'll move on to request for council action, Finance Department. Chair report by Councilmember Perrotini.
We have no report tonight.
Okay. Move on to Public Safety. Chair report by Councilmember Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Shea. We met this evening at 5:45. And just briefly recounting the chief's reports. For the Aberdeen Police Department, we do have one item on the agenda tonight. Activity calls for year-to-date are 9,595, which is tracking with the 2021 levels. And the Washington State legislation ended for 23-24 with no action on the soon-to-be expiring Blake fix that sunsets on July 1st. So we are working with our legal department to draft an ordinance for possession of narcotics, and we should see that at our next council meeting. And on the personnel side of things, we have Police Services Officer Cole Bradbury starting May 9th, and they will be fully staffed in the jail. He is a recent graduate from the Washington CJTC Corrections Academy. Also, Officer Lauren Neal is being promoted to sergeant on Sunday, April 30th. This is the final promotion resulting from the 9 retirements in the last year. A well-deserved congratulations to Sergeant Neal. And they're still conducting backgrounds on entry-level police officer candidates with 4 additional candidates testing this week. On the fire department side, there's nothing on the agenda this evening. Call statistics for 2023 March. The month of March is 375 calls compared to 406 calls last year. Fire service specialist continues to stay busy with 66 public contacts, 10 home visits, 11 fire service specialist referrals, 10 health checks in the Aberdeen Senior Center, and 18 business inspections. For the staffing for our fire department, we're currently down 6 positions. They have 2 entry-level firefighter EMT candidates going through the pre-employment process. And they're still working on a procedure for hiring bonuses to attract firefighter paramedic candidates. And the fire marshal's report, they've conducted several multiple large-scale construction projects that are currently in progress. And fire safety inspection and education program is being developed as part of our community risk reduction plan. Fire safety inspections, fire code violations have increased, working with businesses on corrective measures. So moving on to our agenda item, there's a report from Public Safety and IT requesting the City Council authorize the mayor to sign the agreement to allow the use of the city's Verizon contract and AVL infrastructure by Grace Harbor Fire District 2. I move we adopt this report.
Motion was made, seconded to adopt the report. Any discussion? Seeing none?
I think Councilmember. Carry on.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
That's all for public safety this evening.
Thank you. Public Works, Chair report by Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. Public Works met yesterday, and we have 2 items on the agenda tonight. First is a request from Public Works and the Public Works Director recommending that the City Council award the Bench Drive Pump Station Replacement Project to Custom Water Solutions. I'm going to adopt this report.
Second.
Motion was made, seconded to adopt this report. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The second item from Public Works is a request from Public Works and the Public Works Director recommending that the City Council approve the award of the timber sale to Blue Diamond Timber. I move we adopt this report.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded to adopt this report. Is there any discussion? Under discussion, Councilmember Cedar.
I reviewed the bid that came in at the dollar figure based on the acreage. This is a really good deal. This is a phenomenal sale, and I'm speaking from professional experience.
Some nice wood.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion?
We apparently went out at the right time because it did come in much higher than the estimate.
Okay, anything else? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Special agenda items. We have a few special agenda items that came out of our Personnel Committee meeting last week. And the first one is a request from Personnel and the Finance Department recommending that the City Council authorize the request from Finance to hire a temporary employee through Express to assist with coverage during upcoming medical leave of absence for the period of June 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2023, not to exceed 12 weeks or 480 hours. I move that we accept this report.
Second.
Motion was made, seconded to accept this report. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, we also looked at a couple job descriptions. So we have a request from Personnel and the Human Resources Director recommending that the City Council adopt the job descriptions and classifications for Custodian 1 and Custodian 2 and authorize the recruitment for one position. I move that we adopt this report.
Second.
Motion was made, seconded to adopt this report. Is there any discussion? Under discussion?
Are these positions available now? I mean, are they working now or?
We currently have the city's custodial work is all outsourced to a vendor. And so the city is looking to bring that in-house. And so they wanted to have those two job descriptions approved. So if the right candidate came that fits more as a custodian 2, then they could recruit for that position. Or if they came in as a custodian 1, then they would have an advancement opportunity within the city. So we
When
don't
is
train
this-
them and then lose them.
When is this gonna be available for hiring?
What's the posting
When,
timeline?
we'll probably post May 1. That's when we're looking as soon as possible, as soon as it's approved by the council, so.
Under discussion, Councilmember Shaw.
Since we're under discussion, I'll just add that my eye on the report was caught by the statement that it's going to be a wash financially for the city this year. And since I know that our contracted janitors are part-time, I wondered how that could be. And so I called our city administrator and she shared that we currently pay about $8,000 a month for part-time janitorial.
Oh,
So we're gonna have a full-time, and be able to offer someone a full-time job with benefits and get better care of our buildings with this proposal.
Yeah.
great.
It's a interesting situation that we wound up in. We had, I don't know if I've said this and I'm repeating myself again, but we had numerous hometown contracts for janitor service, a person here, a person there, and so forth. And we wanted to have professional quality janitorial service. So we put out requests for proposals to professional services, janitor services. And it's, I don't know how to describe it other than to just say it doesn't seem that that's available. The type of service that we were looking for is not out there anymore. And so the cost of it and the quality of the service is probably more than it would cost us to have a good quality in-house person that would be here all the time. And if there's a situation, then that person could be called and, you know, it's not something you'd have to write a note and pin it on the wall. So when they come in at night now, if they do, they would take care of it. So we'd have a more personalized service as well. So we tried it, it didn't work. And so we want to go to a city employee. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 3, we're on item number 3, right? Yes, is a request from Personnel and the Human Resources Director recommending that the City Council adopt the revised job description of the Accountant 2 position effective April 1st of 2023. And I move that we accept this report.
Motion was made and seconded to accept this report. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
And we have a promotion to consider. This is a request from Personnel and the Human Resources Director recommending that the City Council approve the request to promote Lisa Nicholas to Accountant 2 effective on April 1st, 2023. And I move that we accept this report.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded to accept this report. Is there any discussion? See none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Under ordinances, resolution.
Okay, the Finance Committee is requesting the City Council adopt a resolution that approves an electronic funds transfer policy. The council at the last meeting requested a revision to the policy that includes a verification process for changes to payee accounts. I move that we adopt this report.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded to adopt this report. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
This will be resolution 2023-13.
Okay. Under discussion item, the city administrator is requesting that the city council consider the adoption of a resolution that approves an electronic and digital signature policy. If approved, she will bring back to the next meeting for approval.
So this particular item would just make it legally valid and enforceable. Currently, we do have, those are the, especially after the pandemic, we've kind of turned to digital signatures. And I feel like this will make it legal for us to continue that practice. So that's why I'm bringing this forward. There are some special cases where we won't allow a digital signature, but there are cases where we will. So the courts are already engaging in this particular practice. This is a standard practice, I would say, throughout government. So I just want to kind of modernize our practices and in a safe manner. And so I've already had IT review this particular policy as well as our legal department, and I got the thumbs up from them. So any questions?
For the Adobe licenses, I know that they can get pretty expensive. Have we looked at all what it costs to
That's
set
what,
up in the city?
whoops, sorry.
Does that be part of this?
Yeah, that's what we're
Okay.
currently using right now is
Yeah.
Adobe. So that's Adobe DC is what we currently use. So it's already kind of built into that. So
Okay,
yeah.
so we wouldn't need a new system
No,
necessarily to
no,
make
we're
this all
already
work.
using that.
Okay, we already have Adobe. Okay.
Okay. Next council meeting, I'll bring forward for council approval, new board member for the museum board. Okay. Anything else? See nothing?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded to adjourn. If there's no objection, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
One.